Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we talk in emoji, because this week we watched Smile.
Written by Frank Cottrell Boyce.
Directed by Lawrence Gach. We go. Still don't know.
And aired on April 22nd, 2017.
Yeah. The glorious writer of In the Forest of the Night back at it for his second shake of the stick, so to speak, and I think a much superior effort.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode quite a bit. A couple, I guess, just one interesting production note is that this was filmed at, I believe it's called the City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, Spain.
Huh.
It's really recognizable when you know what the City of Arts and Sciences looks like, and you kind of have to wonder how Bill didn't recognize that this alien colony in the future looks exactly like this extremely recognizable building from her time on Earth.
Well, maybe she'd never heard of this City of Arts and Sciences, because I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's like I remember looking it up when the episode came out. It's kind of like a big arts and sciences complex. So there's if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this because it's been a while. There's like a museum there, and then just like lecture halls. I think
and
I don't quite remember.
In the middle of nowhere, huh?
In the middle of Spain, actually, it's actually all of that wheat around is like CG'd in because it's actually like in the middle of the city.
Oh.
They had to close it down for like a week to film in it because they needed it empty.
Wow.
Yeah. That's all I have on the production side of things. I just thought it was interesting because it's like really recognizable.
Yeah, maybe I should start actually looking up production information again, because weirdly enough, it seems like there's more for this season than there was for like the last couple of seasons, even though this is way newer.
Maybe Moffat knew he was on his way out and was like, I'm just going to tell you everything. You want to know who's coming back this season? I'll tell you. You want to know who sucks behind the scenes? I'll tell you all the drama.
You want to know what's in the vault? Just post it on Twitter.
He just tweets it out week 1 of the season. The Crotons are in the vault. # Doctor Who.
The official account just tweets it.
Robert Holmes is in the vault. He's coming back this season. Speaking of Twitter, I went back as I guess I'm going to do this whole season to find my reaction to this episode when it aired. And this week, Dylan's weekly one-sentence review. It's like Happiness Patrol, slightly better and slightly worse in some aspects. I don't really remember Happiness Patrol that much, or definitely not as well as I did 2 years ago. So
it's somewhat similar. I think we can touch on some of the similarities at the end once we've explained everything.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to talk about when we get there.
But it starts in the TARDIS with Bill and the Doctor kind of discussing their plans from here on out. Because if you remember, the Doctor didn't mind wipe Bill. He gets his mind wipe fix in this episode, though.
She's talking about like, why are the chairs so far from the console? And he's like, because I stand when I pilot the TARDIS.
She asks a lot of questions that, like, as someone who, if you've watched every episode of Doctor Who, you're not going to ask because you're just so used to things being how they are. Which Bill comes in and asks, like, why are the chairs so far? And she had a couple other ones that I forget. They're like, yeah, that is a good question.
Then he's like, because I stand. And she's like, where's the steering wheel? And he's like, you don't need to steer. It just takes you where you need to go, which is at the end of the episode. Comes back at the end of the episode.
Takes you where you need to go when it does and not when it doesn't, essentially, is what he's saying.
It goes where the showrunner needs it to go.
Which is usually in Cardiff or London.
Yeah, usually suspiciously,
Close.
not even just Cardiff, like suspiciously always specifically present day Cardiff
Yeah.
or London.
And not the recognizable areas of Cardiff, the ones you can pass off for London. That's where the TARDIS goes. Imagine if the Doctor just said that in the episode.
I'd be like, bravo, Moffat, canonizing.
He didn't write this, though.
Well, bravo, Cottrell Boyce, canonizing why London looks like Cardiff in Doctor Who. But then Nardole comes in and he's like, why are you down here? And he's like, I didn't want to take the stairs. Nardole's like, you can't leave Earth, right? You hope you're not thinking of leaving Earth. And the Doctor's like, pfft.
Nardole knows they left last week.
He went with them.
Yeah.
But that's why he says in this episode, like, you can't leave unless it's an emergency, which I guess weird sentient alien oil that's like as powerful or more powerful than the ambassadors of death trying to kill your new student might be an emergency.
Might be, yeah. We get the info that the Doctor has sworn an oath
To watch
over the vault, yeah. Which I don't remember if he specifically said the part about the oath last. We knew he was watching the vault last week, but I think the new info here is that he swore this oath to protect it or whatever.
I don't believe we heard that he swore an oath. I think that's new information.
But then we cut to a facility in the middle of a field of wheat.
Yeah, we cut to the City of Arts and Sciences.
I guess if you knew what this thing was, you'd think, oh, this is all going on in Spain.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, so I just thought it was a random alien facility, which it was in the episode. A random Earth colonist facility.
It's an Earth colony that I guess they just designed to look like this old Earth building. Actually, that's an interesting point. Like, if you were designing an Earth colony, would you hire like an architect to make something look really cool? And if you did, would you want it to look like something from Earth history, or would you want it to look completely new? Like, it's
Just make it look like the Parthenon or something.
just build the Houses of Parliament as your Earth colony.
But some people die, and a woman is informed about this by another woman, and she's like, "Don't stop smiling now, but everyone's dead."
Yeah. She's like, "How can you tell me that?" And she starts crying, and then she gets killed. And then the other lady, the one who told the second lady, she also gets killed.
Yeah, it looks like she just kind of gets swarmed by bugs.
Yes. Well, they eat her up and turn her into bones.
Yeah. So the deadly bugs from Time and the Ronnie are back. No, I'm kidding. Remember that disco ball that let out those like killer beetles?
Is that another devolution of the plotline of an episode like Omega flooding Amsterdam?
It was literally
disco ball filled with beetles.
Okay, it wasn't actually a disco ball. It was like I don't remember what it was, but it looked like a disco ball. But it was actually full of like deadly bugs.
Good old disco ball filled with beetles.
Good old classic show with the wild and out there concepts. I can't believe how much we didn't like even mention any of this while we were watching the classic show of like, what the hell even is this?
Like Megalos when it was a cactus person. It was like, what is even going on? Or Megalos, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the Tom Baker Meglos wasn't even that big a deal, but like the beginning of that episode when you hear his like sinister voice and you pan over, it's a goddamn potted cactus.
Or just like all of Syl, just like everything Syl was ever involved in. Well, the Borad. The
Borad. Who got fused with, what did he get fused with? It was due to like a chemical spill.
like a donkey or something. It looked like a donkey.
This is all like devolution style, like remembrance of what happened, by the way.
Well, the Borad story was just Caves of Androzani, but worse. Just Pippin Jane Baker does Caves of Androzani.
Wait, they wrote that?
I'm sure they did. I don't even remember what that story was called. The one with the Borad.
Time Lash? It was Time Lash.
Yeah, it was Time Lash.
There's that Doctor Who podcast. It's pretty good on the Time Lash, where they drink. They like have Doctor Who themed drinks in the episode.
Maybe we should start doing that.
Retain our sanity.
Well, it was written by Glenn McCoy. Who the hell was Glenn McCoy?
I don't know who Glenn McCoy is.
Who was Glenn McCoy?
Sylvester McCoy's like brother.
Sylvester McCoy.
Nepotism at work.
Sylvester McCoy's alter ego.
That was a Sixth Doctor episode anyway. Sylvester McCoy wasn't even on the radar at that point, I think.
Well, anyway, we're only at the title sequence.
Yeah.
But then the Doctor and Bill land in the same facility.
They just land somewhere completely different. We never see or hear from this facility again.
So they land at the same facility and they meet the emoji bots. They have names.
They do?
The Vardy.
The Vardy are the little nanomachine things.
Oh, right. And they work for the emoji bots.
Yeah. I thought when you said the emoji bots had names, I thought you meant they like had individual names.
This is Bill.
Like, yeah.
This is James. Or more like, this is poop emoji. This is okay emoji.
Yeah. These aren't actual emojis, by the way. They're not like in the canon of emoji canon. Some of them are not, I believe.
Like it might be now.
Maybe. There's over 1,000 emojis now, by the way.
Yeah, the Unicode spec is like massive.
Yeah.
But Bill's really excited about this. The Doctor's like, great, the devolution of human language. Much like all of our recollections of classic episodes has devolved.
Well, the Doctor actually mentions, or maybe it's actually Bill who says this, but someone says that they speak emoji.
It was Bill.
Yeah. And this has actually been like a topic of debate in recent years of like, is emoji a language? And like pretty much most linguists say like no. Like only the fringe ones say like yes, it is. And the reason for that basically is that it's, or I guess when linguists say it's not a language, they mean it's not a natural language, in that it doesn't have like a naturally like codified grammar or naturally like codified intelligibility. And I guess what that means is that in order to create a language from emoji, you would need to communicate in another language first.
Okay.
Because the symbols are not codified. They're not codified naturally. They're controlled by outside forces. So like you don't have control over which emojis exist and which don't. As well.
Like Unicode spec does. My question is, if you mapped each emoji to like a letter of the alphabet and then like just formed words from the emojis, that would just be like using a different alphabet to represent English, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's possible. Like, I wonder.
Of course, I'm
curious. Well, you could do it. I'm curious to know if you could train your brain to recognize emojis like in that way.
I think you.
So that you could like read a message that's written entirely in emojis.
Yeah, you
like
can.
That.
I mean, you can. People talk in coded languages based on English. Like Pig Latin is a super simple one, but like you can train your brain to understand it. I'm sure you could do the same with writing.
Always do that language that Bertha uses in the Fred movie, where you add like
oh God, what was it again?
You add that whole like 3 syllables to every consonant.
Yeah, but I guess the thing also is that not most, but like emoji is also thought of not as its own natural language, and obviously it can be used to form an artificial language. Like you can discuss in English, like, hey, let's make this emoji language, and then you could learn that language. But it also has been thought to be a way of reinserting like gestures when you talk, because like when you speak a language, it's not just the words coming out of your mouth, it's also like your tone of voice and your gestures and your facial expressions that you're making. So emoji is thought to now possibly be able to like reincorporate that into writing. So like as a supplement for language, for written language.
I mean, but I can understand the argument that emoji is a language, like if you look at hieroglyphics, because you didn't speak hieroglyphics. Like you don't go bird with feather, man sitting on chair. Like the Egyptians had a spoken language that they used to define hieroglyphics. So I'm not entirely convinced about that counter argument as to why emoji is not a language.
Well, hieroglyphics are not typically thought of as their own language or an orthography for a language. It's only when you get like more abstract, like with with languages like Chinese, that you start to say like, okay, this is an orthography for a language. But there's debate about this, but most people say like Egyptian hieroglyphs are actually not an orthography in the strict sense for the ancient Egyptian language.
I guess, but it is like a written language of sorts,
Well,
though.
yeah, well, that's what the debate is about. So a lot of linguists say, like, no, it's actually, we can't consider this an orthography, a written language for the ancient Egyptian language. Also, I mean, just the fact that, like, you don't even have control over which emojis exist means that, like, you can't really naturally codify them as time goes on.
I guess. I could make emojis if I wanted to, though. Twitter does it all the time.
Yeah, you could make your own emojis. It would just be extremely difficult to make. It's when I say language, I'm talking about natural language. Like it's you can. There's basically no way you can say that you can't make an artificial language out of emoji because you can just discuss in English. Like, all right, let's make this emoji language and let's do it, and we'll learn it. Also, it's extremely difficult to create like a grammar out of it would be extremely difficult, even if you're creating an artificial language, to create a grammar out of emoji.
I guess.
But anyway, these bots use emojis to represent their state of mind, I guess. And they give the Doctor and Bill emoji badges to wear on their backs.
Yeah. And they mess around with them for a bit and they realize that you can't see your own badge, what you're feeling, because the doctor says it would be like a feedback loop. Like if you knew you were sad, then you would feel sad, kind of thing. I guess that the thinking is that it's difficult to change your emotional state when you see the badge, which is interesting because this is actually something I wanted to talk about for a second here. Is that this is actually contrary to a lot of, I guess, mindfulness theory. Mindfulness being the idea that you live in the present moment and you know how you're feeling. And I guess a lot of the thought around it is that actually by like, I guess codifying or saying like, I feel angry right now, that's a method to process your emotions and lead yourself to feel a different way. It's actually mostly used in like anger management. One of the like primary strategies is to accept and admit that you are angry, and that once you do that, that like typically it's been shown that once you do that, you typically immediately start to calm down because like, okay, now I know actually how I'm feeling. Let's see what I can do about it. So it's interesting that in this episode, the doctor's like, if you see how you're feeling, that might cause a feedback loop and make you feel the same way. Whereas I think that, interestingly, I think that maybe it might actually work the opposite. That if I could go, like straight up, if I could have a badge that told me how I was feeling, like at any moment, I would actually greatly appreciate that. And I feel like that would make me, at least, understand my own emotions better. But I just think that that's like really interesting. I don't know if there's anything else to be particularly said about it.
Yeah, I did feel like this was a half-baked idea because it doesn't really come back up in the episode that like other people can see your back and know how you're feeling, but you can't.
Right.
They don't really do anything else with it.
I mean, it's just there so that the emoji bots know how you're feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
But then, like,
They can read, but can't they read your face as well?
yeah. Because that's the thing is that's the other thing is like in this episode, like if you're smiling, then the emoji bots think you're happy. Like at the beginning, that lady's smiling, but she's like telling this other one, like, everyone's dead, but I'm smiling. And the emoji bots assume because she's smiling that she must be happy. So, yeah, that brings up the question, like, why are the badges necessary?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean, I don't know the answer, so that's why I'm asking the question, like,
Yeah, I've heard of mindfulness theory. Because I've heard of mindful eating, of like not just shoveling food in your mouth, but instead like focusing, like, all right, yes, I'm eating, I'm chewing my food, and now it's going down my throat.
Yeah.
Speaking of eating, how do you like that? The doctor
Now that's
and
a
Bill,
segue.
the doctor and Bill are presented with some delicious-looking Jello cubes.
I could go for some Jello. I haven't had Jello in years. And
Me
then I
neither.
saw in this episode, I'm like, damn, you know what I really want right now? Freaking Jello.
No, I I had the same idea. And like, I haven't had Jello in years, and I hope I don't have it for many more years.
All right. Fair enough.
It's the texture, man. The texture.
Texture is the best part. Why else are you eating Jello? For the flavor? Damn, I really want that green apple flavor.
You know what I found out recently is that the candy banana flavor. This has nothing to do with the episode. You know the candy banana flavor that's like 10
Yeah.
times more banana than real bananas.
Yeah.
That's how bananas used to taste before they got wiped out, and we got the clone pseudo fake awful bananas that we have now.
Wow. Wow.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it is. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's this is also unrelated to the episode, but there's this epidemic, if there's this problem that if there's a bacteria or disease or a bug that attacks bananas, then basically the whole world's banana population is like totally screwed because they're all clones of each other.
Yeah.
So it would be like impossible to generate a banana that's like immune to that problem, which is why a lot of scientists have started advocating like we need to start like adding other banana genesis into the gene pool, because otherwise we're gonna like totally screw ourselves.
Well, there's always plantains and all those other fruits that are kind of like bananas.
They're like banana adjacent. Anyway, speaking of food, actually, the doctor and Bill go to look to see where the food is produced, because the doctor's like, there's no one here, and that's kind of weird. So maybe this is like a survey team getting the grounds ready for people to arrive.
Yeah, and the doctor theorizes that the people are on a colony ship just waiting to get here.
So they go to the food production area, and the doctor's like, where's this all fertilizer coming from? Because the planet's literally dead.
Yeah. This area looks very small. I can only imagine that it's one of many. But like,
yeah, it kind of has to be, right?
Yeah. Not aquaponic or anything. Still just traditional. Heard of aquaponic farming? I've been doing a lot of...
Is that the one where the farms are like underwater? Or?
They're like... It's used in conjunction with like vertical farming a lot, where like everything's done solely in water without any soil, and like and then that's used with vertical farming because the water that you put in up top drips down to the bottom as well.
Gotcha.
So like people say like if you combine those, we can solve a lot of food problems.
We could solve a lot of food problems by just cutting almonds out of our diet. Fun fact, 10% of all the water used in California is just used for almond trees. Literally 10% of all the water in California is used just for almond trees. And here's for comparison, every house in California, every like residential area, if you added up all the water they use, that's only 20% of all the water used in California. So there you go. You're looking for an easy way to cut down water consumption, almonds.
Ban almonds.
So the doctor opens up this hatch and turns out the fertilizer is human bodies.
Whoa,
wow, we were really flippant about that.
Soylent Green is people? What?
Soil and green is people.
Have you ever seen Soylent Green?
No.
Me neither. All I know is that it's people.
I don't even know, like, the original, like, what the whole deal with that thing was, the whole Soylent Green is people thing.
It's a movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a movie called Soylent Green, where they're like, there's this new, I guess it's like a energy powder product or like an energy bar or something. I don't really know. It'll be in the show. Look it up. It'll be in the show notes. The plot twist is that it's made out of humans. I don't know where they go from there. Like, do they find out?
Yeah, where do you go? Where would you go from there?
It's a big multinational corporation. Like, how do we stop them?
So the doctor kind of realizes that they have to be happy, otherwise they get killed, and they run away.
Because their first reaction to seeing these bones is like, oh god, and the robots start coming after them.
Yeah, so they fake happiness. Again, why are the badges necessary? They fake happiness, and they run to the TARDIS. And the doctor tells Bill to wait in the TARDIS.
While he goes back in and solves the problem. And Bill sort of confronts him about this.
Well, he says, this was actually pretty funny. He's like, it's a whole base filled with malevolent robots trying to kill us, and I'm having a childish urge to just blow it all up. And Bill's like, what? And he's like, I'm going to go blow it up now. Bye-bye.
So he does. He goes back in by himself for a while.
Although he actually justifies it because he's like, look, if we leave these robots here, then like when the colonists arrive, they're all gonna die.
Right.
And Bill eventually chases after him because she reads the door. The TARDIS is like, help will come whenever you need it. Paraphrased, of course. And she comes in, she's like, I know why it's disguised as a telephone box. And he's like, yeah, because it got stuck. She's like, no, it's because you help people. He's like, don't try to... What does he say? I wish I had written this down, actually.
I don't remember.
He says, like, don't prophetize me or something like that.
Don't try and put me in a box or something like that.
Something like, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just a guy helping people out. Like, I'm not looking for recognition kind of thing. Which is true. Throwback to all those times the Doctor just ditched without saying goodbye. Adric will never know if he's right, though.
But then they find out that the entire facility is made out of the Vardy, the little nanomachine bots.
Yeah, and the Doctor's like, we're in the belly of the beast now.
So the Doctor theorizes, mostly rightly, that how do I explain this without giving away the bigger twist at the end, that the people who came to set up this colony did so on a ship, and they built outward from the ship. So the entire facility is made out of these nanomachines that built out from the ship. So therefore, the ship is at the center of everything, which they need to get to.
So the Doctor goes there, and he hacks his way in using the sonic screwdriver, as you do. And there's a map, and he tells Bill to direct him on the map, because we forgot to mention when they landed, they got they didn't get like an earpiece, but their brain was hacked. Not for the first time for the Doctor, so that they can
Communicate.
Could communicate. Right, thank you. Without using like an earpiece. So the Doctor tells Bill to direct him
through
from
the
map.
maze.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, the Doctor has already memorized the entire map, and was just he just told Bill to stay behind, essentially, to keep her safe. Because he gets to the engine area, and it's very like precarious. He's walking on these sort of beams, getting there, and the bots are after him. Meanwhile, trying to pull him down and stuff. But then we see a kid like just pop out of nowhere.
Well, Bill she finds this old lady lying on like a pedestal, and she sees a film, I guess, of all the major events that happened in humanity's history up to this point.
Yeah, it starts with like the Egyptians and the Greeks and stuff, and then ends with like the world in flames and the fires of war raging all over the planet.
Bill's like, what happened? I have to know.
It's probably in like 2020.
The Doctor at some point here makes like a sly reference to multiple other stories, because he's like, oh, probably just a human colony ship. I've run into like a bunch of these in my time.
So the humans left Earth because Earth turned into a literal hell world.
Which is tradition in the Doctor Who universe.
Right.
Happens like all the time.
How do you feel about like Bill just learning all this from a recording?
I have no feelings about it.
Yeah, me neither. I have some very slight feelings about it, which is that it's kind of lame. I don't really mind in the long run. It's just like, all right, that's a little lame that they included this.
I guess, but I think the way they did it makes sense, because it's like and I think it's actually something that I don't think previous episodes with human colonists touched on, in that they have to have some way to keep their history with them, right? And so I think in that aspect, it makes sense that this video would be on this ship. It doesn't feel like they just wrote this video in to show Bill all the stuff. It feels like it makes sense that when they left Earth, they would take with them a recording of their history.
I hope it's more than this, like, video, though, because the video was probably fairly short and it just showed you a bunch of images. It didn't really do anything else.
Maybe it's like that I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it's like the technique for speed reading is that part of the reason why you read so slow is because you actually have to move your eyes. But if you like play all the words in the same place on the screen in rapid succession, you could read like 100 words per minute, because you don't need to move your eyes and you can process the words way quicker than your eyes move. So maybe it's like that. Maybe,
yeah. That's actually interesting. Yeah, I do find myself reading quicker when I read EPUBs on my phone of books, and I crank up the text size to like really big, so it's like only a few words per page. And I'm just constantly flipping through, I think. more
Yeah.
so than if I
So
were
you
to
have
just
to
read a
move your
regular,
eyes a
regular
lot
book.
less when you do that, and that's
Yeah.
probably part of the reason why you read a lot quicker that way.
Huh.
I saw a
That's
really
interesting.
interesting video. I'll see if I can find it to put in the show notes that like demonstrated this, where it was like, I'm currently displaying the words at 30 words per minute, like just flashing through them pretty slowly. It's like, but you can actually read a lot faster than this if you don't have to move your eyes, and it like starts flipping through them really fast, and you can basically completely understand it perfectly.
Huh.
So yeah, this kid just pops out of nowhere, and Bill's like, "Doctor, I think we woke him up." The doctor's like, "Wait, what? I just started the self-destruct."
This is when you find out that the the ship was not, a preparedness ship or a ship to like get everything ready. It was the literal colony ship with everyone in cryo sleep.
And the doctor's like, "Oh shoot! Oh no!"
So the people start waking up and they're like, "Oh man, that was a nice nap."
Well, so he thinks Bill's right behind him, and it's actually just an emoji bot. So he bashes it over the head with a wrench, and he ends up like reversing the self-destruct. I don't remember how, or stopping it. He like jams the wheel shut,
Something like that.
and he goes to meet with the colonists, but the boy has like wandered off. Well, he meets with Bill first, and Bill shows him the body, and this is when the doctor. Yeah, I think this confirms that they have like a more detailed history, because the doctor opens up the computer and they have like a whole family tree in there
Oh yeah, I
of this
guess.
lady, and it's like not just this lady, but like everyone, and tells exactly when everyone died. And the doctor's like, "That's kind of weird. There's one person died, and then like two people died the next day, and then like everyone died the day after that."
Yeah, the old woman died of natural causes, which is pretty important because that's how they figure out that once people started mourning her death, the emoji bots and the Vardy recognized that as unhappiness, and their job was to make people happy once they got to this new colony.
Right.
So they just removed unhappiness the only way they knew how, which was to kill the people.
Well, the doctor also says that like they didn't intentionally remove unhappiness. Like the original programming was to keep the humans alive, and people like were grieving, and the grieving was causing them to like die. And then so the emoji bots like incorrectly assumed that the grief was the cause of their death,
No.
and so they elected to try and remove unhappiness.
Huh. Stupid nanobots.
Anyway, the boys like run into two emoji bots. The doctors explain this whole situation to the rest of the colonists, and in traditional human fashion, they're like, "Let's take up arms."
They have guns like ready to go when they wake up.
And the doctor's like, "This is literally why you left Earth. Was because you were fighting everyone."
Yeah, you think the doctor is going to convince them before they go to like literally the what's soon to be the bloodied battlefield, but no, they don't. They're not convinced at all.
The doctor's like, "Why?"
So they go. They're about to start getting killed, and actually, they do start getting killed. A couple people die.
Yeah, well, they blow up an emoji bot because it's like they're holding the boy because the boy's like crying because his mom's dead, and Bill's like, "No, it's okay, it's okay." And then they blow up one of the emoji bots, and the battle's about to begin, and you see this huge flash of white light. Smash cut to everyone lying on the ground, waking up, and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Turns out that the doctor reset all the machines.
Yeah, he tells them that he turned the computer on and off again, and he says that he made a mistake in that he wanted to destroy the emoji bots instead of recognizing that this was an emergent life form, basically.
Yeah, I forget exactly what the line is, but the doctor says that the emoji bots and the Vardy are actually learning and evolving their minds, at least, if not their bodies, which makes them similar to like a life form. And then now they're the new dominant species.
Yeah, and he basically tells the humans, like, you gotta work out something with them now because you're on their planet now. Like, it's their planet.
I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords.
That has never been a more apt quote in Doctor Who history.
So the humans are not happy about this at all, but too bad they have to live with it.
Yeah. Well, these guys did kill the entire survey crew, which was like all of their loved ones.
Yeah. There is that.
But the doctor's like, you gotta figure it out. Like, or the rest of you are going to die because there's no way you can stop these robots. It can like literally just chew you to the bone in 3 seconds.
Maybe this group is actually like one of the warmongering groups on Earth who's just like, man, all the resources on Earth have been exhausted. People are dead. We have nowhere else to fight. Let's go into space and establish a colony to continue our war.
The Doctor implies this is like the last of the human race, and I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah. And that's that.
Well, so it ends with the Doctor and Bill go back to the TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, see, I can just be back right when we left. And he opens the door, and they're like on an ice. There's just everything's covered in ice, and there's an elephant. And he's like, oh, we're in London on the Thames River. And Bill's like, this doesn't look like you're off. He's like, maybe I do need a steering wheel.
Not another Christmas episode.
It's not. It's one of those Frost fairs that I think we mentioned way back because River Song mentioned that she got taken there by the 11th Doctor.
Huh.
Back when London got cold enough to freeze the Thames over. Thanks, global warming. And yeah, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the classic similarities in this episode because, like I said last week, that was something that I think is prevalent throughout this whole season. And as I was skimming through some of my my reviews for this season from when I watched it, my one-sentence reviews, quite a few of them actually like mentioned parallels with the classic series, and especially since I'm surprised I didn't mention this last week, but we're going to have, for the first time in the reboot, a writer from the classic show write an episode for the reboot in this season. We're going to have Rona Munro, who wrote Survival, writing an episode this season.
Heck yeah.
But this episode reminded me, when I watched it the first time, and this time, a lot of the Happiness Patrol. The Happiness Patrol was Helen A. wanted to remove unhappiness from her kingdom, facility, I don't remember, planet. And she was doing this by killing people who were unhappy, and there was that whole like revolution movement of people who were unhappy. And the whole point of that story was that like you couldn't have happiness without sadness, and you couldn't have sadness without happiness. And I think that's like very similar to this episode's idea. Like the abstract idea is similar between the two. In that in this episode, the robots are trying to remove unhappiness by killing them, and they only want everybody to be happy because the robots and the emoji bots incorrectly assume that happiness equals life and sadness equals death.
Yeah, I think the main difference here is that, you know, in this episode, it's all controlled by the bots who were led to this conclusion by like one of their directives. So the humans programmed them that way, and then they got out of hand.
Right.
Whereas in the Happiness Patrol, obviously, it's like literally a regime forcing people to be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess though when you think about it, those are both human like mistakes. One is just not filtered, but one is just like, one just has like the proxy extra layer of like technology behind it.
It reminds me a lot of the Matrix. If you remember in the Matrix, it was like the first Matrix failed because it was a utopia and we were trying to make everyone just happy, but people wanted to be sad, and then we tried to make it dystopia and everyone was sad, so we had to make it 1990 because that was the time when everyone was like perfectly...
peak of human civilization.
That was the peak of human civilization. That's like kind of the same thing, right? Is that nobody wants to be happy forever, because if you're just always happy, then how do you know you're happy without a reference point? Like, how do you know? And if you're always sad, how do you know? If you never experience the other emotion, how do you know? How do you know? That's just not like your baseline. And you could be happier or sadder. You wouldn't know unless you experience the other emotion.
Flashback to like the 1300s when like almost everyone was just like suffering for most of their lives.
But they still had moments of happiness.
I guess.
I assume.
Hopefully.
Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you want to have more classic... Well, I guess there's a couple more things to talk about in relation to the classic series, because the Doctor this episode is like, I'm just helping people out, which is like pretty much what the Doctor was. In the classic series, he didn't really gain this hero complex until RTD took over and introduced the Time War. So I think that's like a pretty direct like callback, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you pretty much touched on most of the things I wanted to talk about in relation to the classic show. This just feels like a classic episode of Doctor Who. It's an Earth colony, robots messing around.
Yeah, it's basically a base under siege, right? Except the base has already been under siege. It's almost a sequel to a base under siege story,
Yeah,
right?
almost. Yeah.
Where the base has already been under siege, and the Doctor like showed up too late. And now he's like, "Well, what happened?"
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was just the interesting idea of grief as a plague, because the Doctor calls it grief as a plague. And it reminded me of, and I can't believe I'm saying this TV show called The 100, which is one of the least like good television shows I've ever watched. It's one of those so bad it's good television shows, in my opinion. There's like one good season. Anyway, in that show, they like at some point they get stuck in a bunker and they have to like unite 13 different clans of people.
Sounds complicated.
That's like season 4. It took them 4 seasons to get to that point. So I'm skimming over 4 seasons of history here. But like this grief as a plague thing reminded me tangentially of this. They weren't able to unite the clans unless basically they made death the enemy. Like this old chancellor dies and he tells like the queen like, this is how we survived, is that you make death the enemy. You make like betrayal the enemy. You fight death. So everyone's like, you're either with us or you're against us. If you're against us, you have to die because you're blocking our goals, basically. And that reminded me a lot of this because it was like the emoji bots incorrectly assumed that grief was the enemy because it led to death. Because grief equals death. If you eliminate grief, then you eliminate death. And that was an incorrect assumption. And I see a lot of parallels between the two, being incorrect assumptions and also being like the only way that the instigators of the policy saw as the way forward, if that makes sense. Like the emoji bots saw that as the only option to kill people who were grieving to prevent other people from dying, I guess.
Yeah, there's this fairly famous article, I think it was written about 10 or 15 years ago by, I don't remember his full name, but his last name is Mbembe. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. But he talks about this concept called necropower, and he has a lot of complicated stuff to say about that, but what necropower is fairly simple itself. It's just the power to control who lives and who dies.
Makes sense. I mean, necro, death.
Yeah.
Power.
Yeah. The article itself goes like way deeper and like way more complicated than that, but like that itself is pretty simple, and I think that's at play here in the Happiness Patrol in the 100 in this episode.
Yeah.
And I mean, when the humans decide to destroy the Vardy and the emoji bots, they're trying to reclaim necropower for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
there's in this episode there's like an intrinsic link between necropower and just power in general. If you have power over life and death, then you control the colony basically, and the humans want control of the colony back, so they try to kill the emoji bots.
Yeah, and this article actually, now that you say that, it's all kind of clicking into place because this article is actually about post-colonial countries in Africa. So
interesting. It's all coming together. Picture of Kronk. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. But that's all I have to say, actually.
Yeah, that's all I had to say too.
Well, I have a tiny little thing I'm going to add, but I'm going to add it in the quotes section because I only have one quote in this episode, and it's related to that quote. So
yeah, I actually had a quote this week, but first we have to do the sonic screwdriver count.
Yeah.
So what did you have for this episode?
Unknown purpose.
As always.
Opening the fertilizer container, making the emoji bot release Bill, I think it was, and then like X-ray scanning when he reveals that the whole facility is made of the Vardy.
Yeah, I had blowing stuff up. I don't remember where that was.
Yeah, I think that was in there too. I think I remember when that happened, and I just think I didn't write it down because this is the first time I experimented with writing everything after I watched the episode, just because I wanted to see if it would change the quality of my...
It doesn't help.
Yeah, it doesn't
actually
help.
Makes it worse.
Actually, that does make it worse, actually. You're right. That's what I discovered this week.
But yeah, why don't we go into the quotes now?
Well, so I've got just one quote, where the doctor says something like, good old incorruptible maps. And I wrote this quote down because I thought that was interesting, because I was like, that's not actually true, because we saw that maps could be corrupted last season in Face the Raven, when Clara was like, yeah, they put fake streets on their maps so they would know if like other people were stealing their maps. So it's like explicitly false that maps are incorruptible. And I just thought it was interesting. And the doctor's like, this analog technology must be better because it's analog, basically, whereas this is one case where that's not necessarily true.
Maybe it just means that it's harder to tamper with.
I guess.
Still could be like created with malicious, like, yeah, let's make a fake map type thing.
Right.
I actually had a couple quotes for once.
Oh, wow.
I had one right at the beginning where Nardole sees Bill in the TARDIS and he goes, why is she here? And the doctor says, because she isn't anywhere else.
I like that
Thought
one.
That was clever. And then later on, the doctor says, what's the opposite of a massacre? And I immediately thought, any good Doctor Who story.
You don't even need good in there. You could just say any other Doctor Who story.
I don't know. I think
Is the massacre another like corruption of our memory? Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe we should watch it again.
You can watch it again. Feel free. I won't be a part of that.
For our 10-year anniversary, maybe that's what we can do.
Watch the massacre every day for a year.
No, it's just that would make me want to throw myself off a building.
I was thinking of doing that in 2020, of watching the Star Wars Holiday Special every day in 2020.
That would be more entertaining than the massacre, though. At least Holiday Special is like entertaining bad. The massacre was just boring bad, which is like even worse. Like if I can draw some entertainment out of it, then it's not as bad as it could be.
It's almost time actually for my annual rewatch of the Star Wars Holiday Special. I watch it every Thanksgiving. I've been doing so since 2016, I believe. Yeah, gets better every year.
Of course it does. Of course it does. If you'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the emoji bots. An emoji is a language. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Trust Your Doctor. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're going to be watching Thin Ice, but until then, the end.